Marijuana, hormones, and a pork burrito? This week on Verify, we're talking about all the ways Olympic athletes can get the boot from the world's biggest stage. Recently, American sprinter Sha'Carri Richardson made headlines when she was banned from competing in Tokyo. Here's what happened. After Richardson competed in the 100-meter race during the Olympic trials, her drug test results came back positive for THC. It's the chemical found in weed. Richardson admitted to smoking pot, saying she did it to cope with her mom's recent death. Still, she was hit with a 1-month suspension that overlaps with the 100-meter race in Tokyo. The decision to suspend her was controversial and left many people asking, what organization actually suspended Sha'Carri Richardson from the 100-meter race? Was it the International Olympic Committee, USA Track and Field, or was it something else? We can verify that the suspension came from an organization called the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, or USADA. This agency manages drug testing for all Olympic and Paralympic athletes. Our sources for this are the USADA and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, aka Team USA. The USADA said it used rules set by a larger group called the World Anti-Doping Agency in its decision to ban Richardson. Here's what they told us in a statement. Per the rules, she received the absolute minimum period of ineligibility, with the minimum being 1 month. We've had 2 other recent cases. Tate Jackson, swimming, and Kamari Montgomery, track and field, involving THC positives that were resolved the exact same way. So that explains the process for banning her from the individual 100-meter event, which coincided with the suspension. But there was still the possibility she could run in the relay. See, Richardson's 1-month ban, well, it would have expired before that event took place, but she was still scratched from the relay team anyway, this time by USA Track and Field, which left her completely off the roster. Richardson's marijuana use left some people drawing parallels to another major Olympic athlete who faced punishment for weed, Michael Phelps. Yeah, let's verify. Did Michael Phelps compete in the Olympics after testing positive for marijuana? We can verify, no. Michael Phelps never tested positive for marijuana, although he was suspended after a photo showed him holding a bong to his mouth. However, the timing of Phelps' suspension did not overlap with the Olympics. One more high-profile athlete ban you might have heard about, a runner named Shelby Houlihan. She was banned for 4 years after she tested positive for an anabolic steroid called nandrolone in December of 2020. In an Instagram post, Houlihan blamed the positive test on a pork burrito she ate, quote, approximately 10 hours before that drug test. So let's verify. Has consuming pork been linked with elevated levels of nandrolone? We can verify that research has shown a connection between the consumption of pork, particularly non-castrated pork, and elevated levels of nandrolone. Experts say the consumption of the castrated pork that's commonly found in the United States would not likely result in a positive test. Here's what Dr. Schlander Bosson, a professor of medicine with Brigham and Women's Hospital, told us. People have studied this, that eating the meat of wild boars can result in a positive test within a few hours of eating that meat, and it can stay positive for a few hours. But that's not the case in real life, because nearly all of the meat that's commercially available that you might find in a restaurant or in a grocery store comes from castrated pigs. The more you know. So far, we've focused on American athletes who've been banned from this year's Olympics. But as we know, the Olympics are an international event, and world-class athletes across the globe have been ruled ineligible as well for a variety of reasons. Let's first go to Namibia. The African country's Olympic Committee said 2 of its top female runners won't be allowed to run in the 400-meter race. One of those runners, Christine Mboma, has the fastest 400-meter time in the world so far this year. But Mboma and her teammate Beatrice Masalingi were disqualified because their natural testosterone levels were too high. So wait, a person can be disqualified for their natural testosterone levels? In this case, yes. It's because of a rule put into place by World Athletics. It's the governing body that oversees international track and field competitions. In 2018, World Athletics lowered the threshold for an acceptable level of natural testosterone for women. The rule only applies to women competing in races between 400 meters and 1 mile. The rule, guys, it has sidelined some of the best female middle distance runners in the world since it changed. In fact, the 3 women who medaled in the 800-meter race at the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Olympics, they can no longer compete in the event because of their natural testosterone levels. World Athletics says the rule is not about cheating. People with naturally high testosterone levels are not cheating. But World Athletics says the rule is about, quote, leveling the playing field to ensure fair and meaningful competition. Although the two Namibian runners can't run in the 400-meter race, their Olympic dreams aren't dashed. They also qualified for the 200-meter sprint. And because the testosterone rule doesn't apply to shorter races, they'll be allowed to compete in that one. The next stop on our international voyage is Russia, which is a bit ironic because you won't actually see the Russian flag or hear the country's national anthem at this year's Olympics. They've also been banned. That's because Russia is still being punished for a systemic doping scandal dating back to last decade. While its athletes can still compete in Tokyo, they'll do so under the acronym ROC, which stands for Russian Olympic Committee. And instead of the typical Russian flag, the flag will have the Russian Olympic Committee's logo. The Russian athletes will still be pretty easy to spot though, as the country's red, white, and blue colors will be heavily featured on their uniforms. Now before we go, we have one more ban to talk about, and it's not an athlete or a country. Can you guess what it is? It's you, the fans. If you live in the US, you already know you weren't allowed to go to the Olympics as a fan. But we've recently learned that even fans who live in Japan won't be able to cheer on their favorite athletes at this year's games. Tokyo is going to be under a state of emergency throughout the Olympics because of COVID-19. Now, Japan has seen a rise in cases, which has come at a time when fewer than a quarter of the population is fully vaccinated. So in order to limit the spread of the virus, for the first time in history, fans, you're not allowed. The good news is there is no ban on watching the Olympics from the comfort of your home. And I don't know about you, but I already picked out my spot on the couch. You know what I mean? All right, I'm Marianne Till, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of Verified. Do you have a question for our team? Just shoot us a text at 202-410-8808. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at verifythis.com. See you next week.